that was definitely the drama surrounding this tournament was Dafran and basically his antics, Emily. What I mean, let's make it clear that he has competed, right? He was an Overwatch pro at Atlanta. He's competing here, but like he doesn't need esports, right? He doesn't need to be right.
Not now, no.
And I think so. The thing with Dafran, and I think again we're kind of talking about this before the show, but I'll reiterate here. Like he is. I mean, a lot of people might get mad at me for saying this. Like a lot of his problems are relatable, right? Like he's the kind of person who's going to get really mad at himself if he's performing badly, even if the rest of his team is doing well, right? And he's winning. And I think to the point of like a tactical shooter, sure you can pop off and like drag your team pretty far, but I still think that more than anything, the most important thing in Valorant is really going to be like teamwork and communication. And it's just like insanely important for a game like this because you need to be calling out where people are. And sometimes your job is going to be to die, like, right? Like you're just going to be going in and you're the entry fragger and you might just die. And that's your job. Your job is to open up the map for the rest of your team, right? So they can rush into site and plant. And I think that someone like Dafran is always going to have this weird like mental push-pull between how well he's performing individually and how much he feels like he's contributing to the team. He's a really volatile player to play with, despite the fact that I think his talent is undeniable. Like we're not talking about someone who is like, like washed streamer category. This is someone who's like could easily be competitive based on his skill. But I don't think a competitive environment is good for him. He himself has said this. He's like, I don't have the mentality for it. It's very taxing on me mentally. It's very exhausting. And also like you can't go off on people sometimes, even if you want to. Like even if it is Solary Cup's fault, right? Sometimes you just have to take the L. Sometimes other people mess up and it's going to reflect poorly on you, and it sucks. And no one wants to be in that position. But if you are in any sort of job, you kind of have to accept that that's going to happen sometimes. And Dafran is not the kind of person who will ever accept that.
And then now we find ourselves in this situation where he does completely unorthodox things during the tournament as a result of things that he couldn't necessarily control or contain. And so now we have a player, like it's frustrating in a way, isn't it? Like we have a player with this immense talent who, let's be honest, that level of talent, he could absolutely be on a team and contribute and maybe even be the star of many organizations, right?
Yep, definitely.
But it may never be.
No, it won't be. No, it will never be.
It may never be. Right?
I think he himself has said that. Right? Like, he's already said, I don't want to go pro. Like, I don't want to be a part of a really professional, like kind of corporate buttoned up environment.
On one hand, you got to admire that, at least being aware enough to know that that's not his environment to be in. He would rather create content, and he'll be very successful at it because he's a charismatic guy, and he does very well when he streams live. I've watched his streams. He's very funny, right? But on the other hand, then you have this talent that you just wish you would be able to see and compare on a grand stage, but it's just not going to happen, so we just have to accept it.
Yeah, it's very similar to kind of Sinatra, and I think you can make a lot of comparisons between the two, and the two of them, go back and forth on Twitter, like they're friendly, they'll host each other, and Sinatra was very much in the same vein as Dafran a few years ago when he was on Team USA, I think 3 or so years ago when he was a 17-year-old and he couldn't play in Overwatch League. Yeah, I interviewed him, and I remember going into that interview, everyone was telling me, like, oh, this kid's toxic, he's the worst, he's vile, there's no way he's ever going to survive a year in the Overwatch League, he's not mature, and I talked to him, and, he was a kid, he's a 17-year-old kid, and he was very open about his issues and how he raged on stream and he was toxic, and he said, I'm going to get better, and I want to be the best player in Overwatch League. 2 years later, he is the world champion, won Overwatch League MVP, won World Cup MVP, won the World Cup, and then he goes off to Valorant, and he wasn't, and he actually turned into a team leader, right? And I think the thing is, Sinatraa wanted to change, and Sinatraa wanted to be, at the top of this competitive scene. Where Dafran's 26 years old. He's not a 17-year-old kid. He's very stuck in his ways. He's an amazing talent. He's a great streamer, and he knows this. And I think I give him credit for that, right? Where if Dafran was, speaking about how like I'm gonna go pro and I'm gonna be the best in the world, I'm gonna win the VALORANT World Championship, and he was doing what he was doing right now, I would be dunking on him. I'd be laughing at him. I was like, this guy has no chance of ever doing that. But he's self-aware. He doesn't want to be a pro. He wants to be a streamer. He knows he doesn't have the mentality for it. He gets upset with himself in games where they're up 12-2. He messes up a Viper wall on split, and he's like, I am so mad right now. I'm just gonna start knifing people.
You mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's a thing of like, sure, like that's hilarious on stream. I watched on stream as it was happening, and the chat's laughing with him. He's making a joke of it. After the game's over, he actually goes into a practice mode to show the people why he was so mad and why his Viper walls and his Viper setups were making him so frustrated. And that's kind of the self-awareness that you kind of like about Dafran, and how even in the face of being banned on Twitch, he still was like, no, screw this guy, screw that guy, screw him, screw them, I'm right. And you gotta respect that to an extent, where it's like, yes, he might be right in the grand scheme of things, or he might be partly right, but as Emily said, sometimes you gotta take the L to get the, you lose the battles to win the war, where Dafran's not losing any battles. He got banned from Twitch, and he went down off the ship, and give him some respect for that. But VALORANT Pro, not gonna happen. Great VALORANT streamer on launch. If he's not banned, he will be one of the most viewed, streamers on launch day.
100%. By the way, I know this is a tangent. Very, very quick before we go into the NA news. Sinatraa, that's one of the biggest mic drops in esports history, right?
Him leaving?
Yeah, like him leaving Overwatch to go to VALORANT. That's got to be like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, mic drop ever.
It's like kicking someone in the kneecaps. It's like kicking someone Overwatch League was already tilting, and then Sinatraa just kind of kicked them in the kneecaps and made them fall in the face. Like it was like the Vince Carter dunk, Arda. The famous Vince Carter dunk.
Of course I know. Yeah,
so Sinatra's the Vince Carter, and Overwatch League was the other guy that's getting dunked on. Like,
thank you for putting it into those terms. Appreciate it.
If Overwatch League doesn't rebound, and it doesn't have a long tooth, and it doesn't come back, and if it folds for whatever reason in the next 2 to 3 years, people are going to look back at the Sinatraa move as a significant reason why things started to go south. Even if, in the grand scheme of things, that might have not mattered at all, it'll be looked upon as, one of those big mic drop moments.
So